I was expected to give up my birthday, a day that's supposed to be about celebrating life, to babysit 15 kids. The phone call came at 7 in the morning, my brother's voice casual, like he was asking me to pass the salt. I stood there in my Chicago kitchen, the birthday card my late husband had given me years ago still propped on the windowsill, and I felt something inside me crack. Today, I'm going to tell you something that's been eating at me for too long. If you've ever had family demands that left you feeling invisible, you'll want to hear this. This isn't easy for me to share, but maybe someone out there needs to know they're not alone in feeling used by the people who should love them most. If this story touches something in you, please subscribe and like this video so it can reach others who might need to hear it. Sometimes sharing our pain is the only way to find our way back to ourselves. My name is Eleanor, and I'm 67 years old. I live in a modest 2-bedroom house on the south side of Chicago, in a neighborhood where the L trains rumble past every 20 minutes and the corner bakery still knows my name. My house has cream-colored siding that needs repainting, a small front porch with 2 rocking chairs I bought at a yard sale, and a backyard garden where I grow tomatoes and basil every summer. Inside, the walls are covered with family photos, my late husband Daniel and me on our wedding day, my brother Kevin as a young man before life hardened him, my nieces and nephews at various ages, their smiles frozen in time. That morning, I had planned something simple for myself. I woke up at 6:30, earlier than usual, with a flutter of anticipation in my chest that I hadn't felt in years. Birthdays had become quieter since Daniel died, but I still tried to make them special, small rituals to remind myself that I mattered, that my life was worth celebrating even if I was celebrating alone. I made myself a proper breakfast, not the usual toast and coffee grabbed between tasks. I cooked scrambled eggs with fresh chives from my garden, crispy bacon, and sourdough bread toasted just right. I set my small kitchen table with the good china, the delicate floral pattern Daniel and I had received as a wedding gift 42 years ago. I even put on some jazz, the kind Daniel used to play on Sunday mornings when we'd linger over coffee and the newspaper, his reading glasses perched on his nose, my foot touching his under the table. The house smelled like bacon and fresh coffee, and for a moment, just a brief, shining moment, I felt content. This was my day, my birthday, 67 years of surviving, learning, loving, losing, and somehow still standing. I was going to take the Blue Line downtown, visit the Art Institute like Daniel and I used to do every year on my birthday, then have lunch at that Italian place on Taylor Street where they make the cannoli fresh. I had my outfit picked out, a navy dress with white polka dots that Daniel always said made my eyes sparkle. I even bought myself a small birthday cake from the Polish bakery 2 blocks over, just a personal-sized one with buttercream frosting. Mrs. Kowalski, who ran the bakery, had remembered it was my birthday without me saying anything. "For you, Eleanor," she'd said with a warm smile, refusing to let me pay full price. "May this year bring you joy." Joy. Such a simple word, but it had felt like a blessing, a promise of good things to come. But Kevin's voice on the phone changed everything. "Listen, Elle, Sarah and I really need a break. The kids are driving us insane, and we planned this whole thing with some friends. They're dropping their kids off too. We figured your place would be perfect since you've got that big backyard and, you're not doing anything anyway." Not doing anything. Those words settled in my stomach like stones. I looked at my reflection in the hallway mirror. Gray hair I'd actually styled for once, a hint of lipstick I'd applied earlier, the birthday dress already on. I was doing something. I was celebrating 67 years of existence, of surviving Daniel's death 5 years ago, of rebuilding a life alone in this house that echoed with memories. "Kevin, it's my birthday," I said, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be. "Oh, right. Well, we can celebrate next week or something. This is kind of already set up, Elle. The parents are counting on it. We told them you'd be available." Available, that word again. I'd been available my whole life. Available to watch Kevin's kids when he and Sarah wanted date nights. Available to lend money when their business was struggling, money I never saw returned. Available to host Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, every family gathering because my house was convenient and I didn't have much else going on. available to be the family doormat, though I didn't know they called me that yet. "How many kids exactly?" I asked, already feeling my resolve weakening. "Oh, not too many, like 15 maybe, but they're good kids, Elle. They'll just play in the yard. You won't even notice them." 15 children, on my birthday, in my small house with my small yard. I thought about the noise, the chaos, the responsibility of watching that many children who weren't even my own. I thought about my quiet museum visit, my cannoli, my small cake with the single candle I'd planned to light in Daniel's memory. "I don't think," I started. "Great, thanks, Elle. You're a lifesaver. We'll drop them off around 10. You're the best sister ever." The line went dead before I could finish my sentence. I stood there holding the phone, staring at my birthday cake on the kitchen counter. The frosting had delicate pink roses piped along the edge. I'd asked the baker to write "Happy Birthday, Eleanor" in elegant script. Now it looked absurd, sitting there like evidence of my own foolishness for thinking today would be about me. The first children arrived at 9:45. Kevin and Sarah pulled up in their new SUV, the one they'd bought 6 months ago while still owing me $3,000. Sarah stayed in the car, sunglasses on, scrolling through her phone. Kevin herded his 5 kids up my front steps like he was delivering packages. "Okay, troops, Aunt Eleanor's going to watch you today. Be good." He didn't even look at me as he said it, already backing down the steps. "We'll pick them up around 8 tonight, maybe 9. We might grab dinner after." "Kevin, wait." But he was gone, and more cars were pulling up. Parents I'd never met emerged with children of various ages. A woman in yoga pants and designer sunglasses handed me a diaper bag. "Thanks so much for this. Madison has a dairy allergy and Jackson needs his inhaler every 4 hours. Instructions are in the bag." She was in her Mercedes before I could respond. By 10:30, my house looked like a daycare center had exploded. There were children everywhere, on my couch, in my kitchen, tracking dirt through my clean hallways. 2 boys were fighting over a toy in my living room, their voices escalating from argument to shouting to physical shoving. A little girl was crying because someone took her snack, her wails piercing and inconsolable. 3 kids had already asked me for drinks, food, entertainment. The noise was overwhelming, a cacophony of shrieks and laughter and demands that made my head pound. I tried to count them, to keep track of who was who and what allergies or medical needs each child had. There was Madison with her dairy allergy and her brother Jackson with his inhaler. Kevin's 5, the oldest boy Marcus, who was 13 and already emanating teenage disdain, 10-year-old twins Aiden and Liam who fed off each other's chaos, 9-year-old Emma who looked almost as overwhelmed as I felt, and 6-year-old Sophie who'd already asked for her mother 4 times. Then there were 8 more children whose names I couldn't keep straight, a blur of ages from 3 to 12, each with their own needs, personalities, and capacity for destruction. A 3-year-old boy, Tyler, Trevor, had somehow gotten into my bathroom and unrolled an entire roll of toilet paper, trailing it through the hallway like streamers. 2 girls were arguing over who got to sit in Daniel's old reading chair, neither of them remotely careful with the worn leather that still held the shape of his body. Someone had spilled juice on my hardwood floor and walked through it, leaving sticky footprints throughout the house. "Miss Eleanor, I'm hungry," a voice called from somewhere. "Miss Eleanor, he hit me," from another direction. "Where's your bathroom?" A small, urgent voice. "Can we go outside?" "I'm bored." "When are my parents coming back? I don't feel good." The demands came from all directions, overlapping, urgent, relentless. I felt like I was drowning in noise and need, unable to catch my breath or find solid ground. I stood in my kitchen, still wearing my birthday dress now splattered with juice from when one child bumped into me. The Art Institute would be opening right now. Daniel and I always arrived right at opening to beat the crowds. We'd spend hours in the Impressionist gallery, his hand warm in mine as we stood before Monet's haystacks. After he died, I'd continued the tradition alone, finding comfort in the familiar paintings, in the ritual of it. Not this year. A crash came from the living room. I rushed in to find one of Kevin's boys had knocked over a lamp. Not just any lamp, but the Tiffany-style one Daniel had saved up to buy me for our 30th anniversary. The glass shade lay in pieces on my hardwood floor, irreparable. I stood frozen, staring at the shattered glass. That lamp had been Daniel's pride and joy, something he'd saved for secretly over months, because he knew how much I'd admired one like it at an antique shop. He'd presented it to me wrapped in silver paper, his eyes twinkling with the pleasure of surprising me. "For my girl who lights up every room," he'd said, and I'd cried because it was beautiful and because he saw me that way, as someone who brought light. Now it was destroyed. The green and amber glass that had cast such warm light in our living room for 17 years lay scattered across the floor in jagged shards. I knelt down slowly, my knees protesting, and picked up a piece. It was from one of the dragonfly wings that had decorated the shade, Daniel's favorite part. He'd loved how the light shone through it at sunset, casting colored patterns on our walls. The child, Marcus, Kevin's oldest, looked at me with wide eyes, more annoyed at being interrupted from his game than sorry for the destruction. "It was an accident," he said with a shrug that looked practiced, like he'd broken things before and knew the magic words that made adults give up on consequences. I looked at him, this 13-year-old who'd been in my house countless times, who I'd fed and watched and cared for since he was a baby. Did he even know what this lamp meant? Did he care? Did Kevin ever teach his children to respect other people's belongings, other people's spaces, other people's hearts? "This lamp was from my husband," I said quietly, my voice shaking. "He's dead now. This was one of the few things I had left from him." Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "I said it was an accident. I didn't mean to." "But you're not sorry." He blinked. "I mean, yeah, I guess I'm sorry." He guessed. Not, "I'm so sorry, Aunt Eleanor." Not, "Is there anything I can do?" Just a guess at an apology, the bare minimum to escape discomfort. I swept up the glass with shaking hands, my birthday dress swishing around my knees. Each shard felt like a piece of my dignity, my autonomy, my own special day. I remembered Daniel presenting that lamp to me, his eyes twinkling as I unwrapped it. "For my girl who lights up every room," he'd said. Now it was trash in my dustpan. The day crawled by in a blur of demands. Lunch was a disaster. I'd planned to have leftovers alone while watching my favorite cooking show. Instead, I made 15 peanut butter sandwiches, discovered 3 kids had peanut allergies nobody mentioned, and ended up ordering pizza with money I'd been saving for new winter boots. The children ate like locusts, complained the pizza wasn't from their favorite place, and left crusts and grease stains all over my dining room table. Around 3, one of the older girls, maybe 12, looked at me with something like pity. "Is it really your birthday today?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. "That sucks," she said with the blunt honesty of pre-adolescence. "My mom would never babysit on her birthday. She says birthdays are sacred or whatever." Sacred. What a concept. When had my birthday become just another day for everyone else to use me? I retreated to my bedroom for a moment, just to breathe. On my dresser sat a photo of Daniel and me at Navy Pier, the Chicago skyline behind us, both of us laughing at some joke I could no longer remember. Next to it was a photo of Kevin and me as children, gap-toothed and grinning, before life taught us our roles, him as the taker, me as the giver. When had it started? I traced the pattern back through the years, like following a thread. There was the time Kevin asked to borrow $500 for his first business venture, a food truck that failed within 6 months. I never asked for the money back because he was my baby brother, and families help each other. Then there was the first babysitting request, just a quick evening so he and Sarah could celebrate their anniversary. It became every Friday, then weekends, then any time they wanted. I remembered the first time I said no. Kevin was 32, I was 41, and I'd planned a weekend trip to see an old friend in Milwaukee. When Kevin called asking me to watch the kids, I explained I had plans. The silence on the other end was heavy with disappointment. Sarah got on the phone, her voice tight. "We really needed this, Eleanor. We have so much stress with the kids. Can't you reschedule? Your friend will understand." I rescheduled. I always rescheduled. The money started small, 20 here, 50 there. Then it was bigger amounts for emergencies that were never quite emergencies. The transmission on their car, the down payment on their current house, the kids' private school tuition when public school was supposedly failing them. Each time, Kevin promised to pay me back. Each time, the debt was forgotten within weeks. I kept a ledger once, years ago. Sitting at my kitchen table late one night after another forgotten IOU, I tallied everything. The babysitting hours at even minimum wage, the loans, the gifts I bought the kids because Kevin and Sarah always seemed short on cash around birthdays and Christmas. The total made me nauseous. It was more than $20,000 over the years. $20,000 of my modest teacher's pension, my savings, my nest egg. I hid the ledger in a drawer and never looked at it again. What was the point? You can't bill family. You can't demand respect from people who don't think you deserve it. A scream from the backyard jolted me back to the present. I rushed outside to find two boys had trampled my tomato plants, the ones I'd carefully nurtured from seeds, the ones that were just starting to bear fruit. The boys were using the tomato cages as swords, laughing as dirt and crushed plants flew around them. "Stop!" I shouted, louder than I'd spoken all day. They froze, startled. Those were my plants. I grew those. One boy, Kevin's middle child, rolled his eyes. "They're just plants. Dad says you spend too much time on this garden anyway. He says you should get a real hobby." A real hobby. Gardening, which gave me purpose and peace, which connected me to the earth and the seasons and life itself, wasn't real enough. I looked at this child, this mirror of his father's casual cruelty, and felt something harden in my chest. "Get inside," I said quietly. "All of you." The rest of the afternoon passed in a fog. I put on a movie, distributed snacks mechanically, and retreated to my kitchen. My small birthday cake sat on the counter, untouched. The pink frosting roses seemed to mock me now. "Happy birthday, Eleanor." What a joke. At 8:30, parents started trickling back. They picked up their children with barely a thank you, certainly no offer of payment or even a birthday wish, though Kevin must have mentioned it. The woman with the dairy-allergic child didn't even come to the door, just honked from the driveway and waved for me to send Madison out. Kevin and Sarah were the last to arrive, strolling up at 9:15 with shopping bags from expensive stores on Michigan Avenue. Sarah's hair was freshly highlighted. Kevin had a new watch gleaming on his wrist. "How'd it go?" Kevin asked, barely looking up from his phone as his children swarmed past him to the car. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something. Instead, I heard myself say, "Fine." It was fine. "Great. You're a saint, Elle. We owe you one." Kevin glanced at my dress, at the juice stain near the hem. "Oh, did we interrupt something? Were you going somewhere?" "Were." Past tense, as if my day, my plans, my birthday had already happened and been dismissed. "It was my birthday," I said. Right. Happy birthday." He gave me a distracted side hug, already herding his kids toward the car. "We'll celebrate next week. Sarah's making a roast or something. You should come over." They left. I stood on my porch in the gathering dark, watching the taillights disappear down the street. The L rumbled past, carrying people to their Saturday night plans, their lives, their purposes. I went inside to my destroyed living room, my trampled garden, my untouched birthday cake. I sat at my kitchen table and cried for the first time in years. Not delicate tears, but great heaving sobs that came from somewhere deep and buried. The kind of crying that leaves you empty and raw, where you can't catch your breath and your whole body shakes with the force of finally releasing what you've been holding in. I cried for Daniel, who would have never let this happen. Daniel, who used to tell Kevin off when he got too demanding, who'd say, "Eleanor has plans that day," even when I was already caving. Daniel, who saw me as a whole person with my own needs and dreams, not just as a supporting character in everyone else's story. I cried for the woman I used to be, before I learned that being useful meant being used. I used to have opinions, preferences, boundaries. I used to plan trips and pursue hobbies and spend money on myself without guilt. When had I lost her? When had I become this hollow thing, defined entirely by what I could provide to others? I cried for every time I said yes when I meant no, every boundary I failed to set, every piece of myself I gave away thinking it would earn me love, for every canceled plan, every forgotten IOU, every birthday and Christmas where I gave expensive gifts and received generic ones or nothing at all. For every phone call that started with "I need" and never included "How are you?" For every family photo where I was behind the camera instead of in the frame. The sobs gradually subsided into hiccups, then into shaky breaths. I felt wrung out, exhausted, but also somehow lighter, as if crying had released some of the poison I'd been carrying. When the tears stopped, I cut myself a piece of birthday cake. It was too sweet, the frosting cloying. I ate it anyway, alone in my kitchen at 10:30 at night, still wearing my stained birthday dress. The candle I'd bought to light in Daniel's memory sat unused on the counter. I didn't have the heart for ritual anymore. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around me. This house had seen my whole adult life, Daniel carrying me over the threshold as a bride, the two of us painting the nursery a hopeful yellow before we learned we couldn't have children. Holidays with Kevin's growing family filling the rooms with noise and life. Daniel's slow decline and peaceful death in our bedroom. And then years of just me, rattling around in rooms too big and too small at the same time. I thought about my students, the ones I'd taught for 35 years before retiring. I'd been a good teacher, firm but fair, invested in each child's success. I set boundaries, I had expectations, I didn't let them take advantage of my kindness. Why couldn't I do the same with my own family? The answer came in the dark, unwelcome and true, because I was afraid of being alone. Daniel was gone. I had no children of my own. Kevin and his family were all I had left. If I pushed back, if I demanded respect, what if they left me? What if I ended up completely isolated, with no one to call on holidays, no one to remember my birthday even in passing? But they didn't remember my birthday anyway, not really. And wasn't I already alone, even in a room full of Kevin's children? Wasn't loneliness about the quality of connection, not the quantity? I thought about the ledger hidden in my drawer, the tally of money and time that nobody valued. I thought about all the times I'd rearranged my life, canceled my plans, postponed my own needs, because someone else's emergency was always more important than my routine existence. When was the last time Kevin asked how I was doing? Really asked and waited for an answer? When was the last time Sarah invited me to something because they wanted my company, not my free labor? When was the last time anyone in the family considered what I might want, need, or feel? The sun rose on my 67th birthday plus one day. I got out of bed and looked at myself in the mirror. The woman staring back looked tired, older than 67, defeated. But there was something else in her eyes too, something new and sharp. Anger, maybe, or clarity. I made myself breakfast, eggs and toast, coffee with cream, and sat at my kitchen table. The house was quiet except for the ticking of the wall clock, each second marking time I'd never get back. I thought about the years ahead. If I lived to be 80, that was 13 more years. 13 more years of being available. 13 more years of being the family doormat. Or I could choose differently. The thought was terrifying and exhilarating. What would it look like to choose differently? To say no and mean it? To demand respect instead of hoping for it? I didn't have answers yet, but I knew something had shifted. The crack that started when Kevin called yesterday morning had widened into a chasm. I couldn't go back to the way things were, pretending everything was fine, that being used was the same as being loved. I spent that Sunday cleaning my house, erasing the evidence of 15 children. I swept up crumbs, wiped sticky handprints from walls, tried to salvage what I could of my trampled garden. The broken lamp was beyond repair. I threw it away, each piece a small liberation. In my bedroom, I opened the drawer where I'd hidden the ledger years ago. The notebook was dusty, my handwriting from a decade earlier looping across the pages. I read through the entries, seeing the pattern clearly. Every loan coincided with Kevin buying something new. Every babysitting session aligned with Kevin and Sarah's leisure time. The numbers weren't just about money. They were about value, about whose time and resources mattered. I didn't realize I was crying again until tears spotted the pages. Not for the money itself, but for what it represented. My brother had turned me into a bank, a free childcare service, a convenient solution to his problems. And I had let him. The phone rang. Kevin's name flashed on the screen. I stared at it for a long moment, then let it go to voicemail. A few minutes later, I listened to the message. "Hey, Elle, so Sarah's parents are coming to town next weekend, and we were thinking we'd take them to that nice steakhouse downtown. Obviously, we can't bring all 5 kids, so we figured you could watch them Friday and Saturday night? Let me know. Oh, and about that birthday dinner I mentioned. Sarah's swamped this week, so maybe we'll do it later this month. Thanks." Obviously. Figured. The language of assumption, of entitlement. I saved the message, though I wasn't sure why. Evidence, maybe. Proof that I wasn't crazy, wasn't imagining the exploitation. I called my friend Patricia, someone I'd known since teaching days, but rarely saw anymore because I was always too busy with family obligations. She answered on the second ring, her voice warm with surprise. "Eleanor, it's been ages. How are you?" How was I? The question felt impossibly large. I started talking and couldn't stop. I told her about the birthday, the 15 kids, the broken lamp, the trampled garden. I told her about the years of loans and babysitting and canceled plans. I told her about feeling invisible in my own life. Patricia listened without interrupting. When I finally ran out of words, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Eleanor, do you remember what you used to tell your students? About teaching people how to treat them?" I did remember. It was one of my core principles. You teach people how to treat you by what you accept, what you allow, what you tolerate. I'd said it hundreds of times to students dealing with bullies or difficult friendships. "You've taught Kevin that this is acceptable," Patricia said gently. "Every time you say yes when you mean no, every time you lend money you know won't be repaid, every time you accept less than you deserve, you're teaching him that it's okay to treat you this way." The words hit like a physical blow. She was right. I'd been complicit in my own exploitation. The anger I'd been feeling turned inward, hot and ashamed. "It's not your fault," Patricia added quickly. "You were being kind. You were trying to be a good sister, a good aunt. But kindness without boundaries isn't kindness. It's self-destruction." We talked for 2 hours. Patricia told me about her own experiences setting boundaries with her adult children, how hard it was at first, how much better their relationships were now. "My daughter Lisa used to call me every time she had a childcare crisis," Patricia said, "which seemed to be every week. I'd cancel my plans, rearrange my schedule, drive across town at a moment's notice. One time, I missed my own doctor's appointment, one I'd been waiting 3 months for, because Lisa needed me to watch the kids while she got her nails done. Her nails, Eleanor. I winced, recognizing my own patterns in her story. I kept telling myself it was what mothers do, what grandmothers do. We sacrifice, we're available, we put everyone else first. Patricia's voice grew soft. But one day, I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize myself. I'd become this exhausted, resentful person who said yes with her mouth while screaming no in her head. I was angry all the time, but I directed it at myself for not being more patient, more giving, more available. "What changed?" I asked. "My husband had a heart attack. Nothing major, thank God, but it scared me. I realized I'd been so busy being everyone else's solution that I'd neglected my own health, my own marriage, my own life. And for what? Lisa didn't appreciate it. She expected it. There's a huge difference." I nodded, feeling tears prick my eyes. So I started saying no, just small no's at first. I can't do Thursday, but I could do Saturday. Then bigger ones. I'm not available this week. So Lisa was furious. She told me I was being selfish, that family helps family, that she'd always been there for me. Patricia laughed bitterly, which was a lie. When had she ever been there for me? Name one time she'd dropped everything for my needs. What happened? She didn't call for 2 months. It was awful. I cried. I doubted myself. I almost called to apologize. But my husband, God bless him, he said, "Pat, if the only way to keep your daughter in your life is to let her abuse you, is that really a relationship worth keeping?" The question hung in the air. Was it? They respect me more, Patricia said, because I respect myself enough to demand it. Lisa calls now to ask, not tell. She says thank you. She offers to pay me for babysitting, though I usually don't take it because now it's my choice to help, not my obligation. Our relationship is real now, not just transactional. After we hung up, I sat with those words. Respect myself enough to demand it. What would that look like in practice? I made a list. Things I would no longer do. No more spontaneous babysitting without at least a week's notice. No more loans without a written repayment plan. No more hosting family events unless others contributed equally. No more accepting last-minute cancellations of plans they'd made with me. No more pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. I stared at the list, my handwriting neat and firm across the page. Each item was simple, reasonable, the kind of boundary any self-respecting person would maintain. Yet writing them down felt like a radical act of rebellion. I added more. I will not answer the phone if I don't want to talk. I will not feel guilty for saying no. I will not accept criticism for having needs. I will not justify my boundaries or argue about their validity. I will not set myself on fire to keep others warm. That last one I'd read somewhere online, and it resonated deeply. How many years had I spent burning myself down to nothing so Kevin and his family could stay comfortable? The list felt revolutionary, also terrifying. What if they got angry? What if they cut me off completely? The old fear rose up, the one that had kept me compliant for so long. I picked up my phone, fingers hovering over Kevin's number. I could call right now, apologize, tell him I overreacted, that of course I'd watch the kids this weekend. That family was more important than pride. But then I looked at the photo on my dresser, Daniel and me at Navy Pier, both of us laughing. What would he say if he could see what I'd become? Daniel, who'd always encouraged my teaching career, who'd supported my independence, who'd loved my strength. Would he even recognize this diminished version of me? I set the phone down, picked up the list instead. What exactly did I have to lose? I was already lonely. I was already being taken for granted. The only difference would be that I'd stop volunteering for my own exploitation. At least if they cut me off. I'd be lonely with my dignity intact. I'd be alone, but not diminished. I'd have myself back, even if I had nothing else. I spent the next few days strengthening my resolve. I read articles about family dynamics and healthy boundaries. I talked to Patricia again. I even looked into a support group for people dealing with difficult family members. Knowing I wasn't alone helped. There were hundreds of women just like me, good-hearted people who'd been designated as the family givers and then forgotten when they needed anything in return. On Wednesday, I got another call from Kevin. This time, I answered. "Hey, Elle, did you get my message about Friday?" "I did. I can't do it." Silence, then a confused laugh. "What do you mean you can't? You got plans or something?" "Or something. I'm not available to watch the kids this weekend." "But Sarah's parents, that's your problem to solve, Kevin, not mine." More silence. I could practically hear him recalibrating, trying to find the angle that would make me cave. "Is this about your birthday? Look, I'm sorry we missed it. We've been so busy." "You weren't busy on my birthday. You were shopping on Michigan Avenue while I watched 15 children, including 5 that weren't even yours. We needed that time together. Do you know how stressful it is having 5 kids? No, I don't, but I do know how stressful it is watching 15 of them for free on my birthday, while my plans get destroyed and nobody even says thank you. Jesus, Elle, this isn't like you. What's gotten into you? Self-respect, I said. Finally. I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking, my heart pounding. I'd done it. I'd said no. I'd pushed back. The phone rang again immediately. I didn't answer. It rang 6 more times that day. I let every call go to voicemail. The messages started conciliatory and grew progressively more frustrated. Elle, come on. Don't be like this. We really need you this weekend. You're being selfish. Family helps family. That last one from Sarah. Family helps family. As if I hadn't been helping for 20 years, as if the help only went one direction. Thursday afternoon, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Sarah on my porch, her face tight with annoyance. "We need to talk," she said, brushing past me into my house without invitation. I followed her to my living room, where she stood with her arms crossed. "What's this really about, Eleanor? Kevin says you're being difficult." "I'm being difficult? I watched 15 kids on my birthday without being asked. That seems pretty accommodating to me." "We had plans. We told people you'd be available. You told people I'd be available without asking me. That's not the same thing." Sarah's jaw tightened. "You don't understand what it's like having kids. We need breaks sometimes. Then hire a babysitter, or better yet, pay me for all the free childcare I've provided over the years." She actually laughed. "Pay you? Your family?" "Exactly. I'm family, not a free service." "This is about money? Seriously? After everything Kevin's done for you?" I felt the old guilt rising, the automatic instinct to back down. But I stood firm. "What exactly has Kevin done for me?" Sarah looked flustered. "He's been a good brother. He cares about you." "He uses me. There's a difference." "You're being ridiculous. You live alone in this house with nothing to do. We thought we were giving your life purpose." The words hung in the air between us. Purpose. As if my life without their needs was empty. As if I only mattered in service to them. "Get out," I said quietly. "What?" "Get out of my house, now." Sarah stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "You can't be serious." "I'm completely serious. Leave." She left, slamming the door behind her. I stood in my living room, shaking with adrenaline. I'd done it again. I'd held my ground. That night, Kevin called. His voice was hard. "What the hell did you say to Sarah? She came home crying." "I told her the truth, that you use me, that I'm not free labor, that I deserve respect." "Respect? We respect you." "No, you don't. You take advantage of me. There's all the money I've lent you over the years, over $20,000 that you've never paid back. The constant babysitting, the way you volunteer me for things without asking. When's the last time you asked how I was doing? When's the last time you considered what I might want? You never said anything." "I shouldn't have to. Family should care enough to notice." "Oh, so now we're bad people because we assumed you'd want to help your nephews and nieces." "You're not bad people, but you're not treating me like I matter, and I'm done accepting that." Kevin's voice went cold. "Fine. If that's how you feel, maybe we need some space. Maybe the kids don't need to be around someone who thinks spending time with them is such a burden." The threat was clear. Cut me off. Make me choose between my boundaries and my family. The old Eleanor would have caved immediately, apologized, promised to do better. But I wasn't the old Eleanor anymore. "If that's your choice, I'll accept it," I said. "But know that it's your choice, not mine. I love those kids. I love you. But I won't be disrespected anymore. If you can't treat me like I matter, then maybe we do need space." I hung up, and then I cried, because loving someone doesn't make them capable of loving you back the way you need. The next few days were quiet. No calls from Kevin, no texts from Sarah. The kids' school photos that usually cluttered my fridge seemed to stare at me accusingly. Had I made a terrible mistake? Had I chosen pride over family? The silence was deafening. For 20 years, my phone had buzzed constantly with requests, demands, last-minute needs. Kevin calling to ask if I could watch the kids. Sarah texting shopping lists for holiday dinners I was hosting. The kids' school sending emergency contact notifications because I was listed as the backup for pickup. My life had been punctuated by other people's needs. Now, nothing. I found myself checking my phone compulsively, wondering if it was broken. I called Patricia just to make sure it was working. "It is," she assured me gently. "They're just trying to punish you with silence. It's a manipulation tactic. If you feel bad enough about the quiet, you'll break down and apologize, and things will go back to how they were." "What if they never call again?" I whispered, voicing my deepest fear. "Then you'll grieve and move forward." But Eleanor, what were you really losing? Honest question. Were they adding joy to your life or just obligation? I thought about it. When was the last time I'd hung up the phone from Kevin feeling happy? When was the last time a visit from his family had left me energized rather than exhausted? When was the last time I'd looked forward to seeing them instead of dreading what they'd ask of me? I couldn't remember. But then I'd remember my birthday, the broken lamp, the trampled garden, the casual way Kevin dismissed my existence, the juice stain on my special dress, the untouched museum ticket I'd bought in advance, the cannoli I never got to eat, the birthday that wasn't about me at all. And I knew I'd made the right choice, even if it hurt. The hardest part was the mundane moments. I'd be at the grocery store and see the cereal Kevin's kids liked, and my hand would reach for it automatically before I remembered I didn't need to buy it anymore. I'd pass the park and think about taking Emma there, then remember I might never take her there again. I'd cook dinner and automatically make enough for leftovers to send home with Kevin, then realize I was cooking just for me now. Grief isn't just for death. You can grieve relationships that are still technically alive, but functionally over. Patricia invited me to join her book club. It met Thursday evenings at a community center near her place. I'd always said no before. Too busy with family obligations. This time, I said yes. The group was small, 6 women between ages 55 and 75. They welcomed me warmly, asked questions about my life, actually listened to my answers. We discussed a novel about a woman finding herself after divorce. The themes resonated uncomfortably. I hadn't lost a husband to divorce, but I'd lost myself somewhere along the way. After the meeting, a woman named Joan approached me. She was 72, sharp-eyed and direct. "Patricia told me a bit about your situation. May I share something?" I nodded. "My daughter did something similar to what your brother's doing. Used me for free childcare, borrowed money constantly, only called when she needed something. It took me 3 years to set boundaries. You know what happened?" "She cut you off?" I guessed. "For about 6 months, yes, it was awful, but then she came back. Not because she needed something, but because she'd had time to think. She apologized, really apologized. And now our relationship is better than it's ever been because it's built on mutual respect instead of my servitude." "And if she hadn't come back?" Joan smiled sadly. "Then I would have grieved and moved on, because the alternative, continuing to let her use me, was a slower kind of death. I was teaching her that I didn't matter, and I do matter. So do you. I do matter. Such simple words. Why did they feel so revolutionary? Over the next week, I started filling my life differently. I went back to the Art Institute, finally took that quiet tour through the Impressionist gallery. I stood before Monet's haystacks and felt Daniel's presence, not as grief, but as gentle company. I signed up for a gardening club. I volunteered at a literacy center, helping adults learn to read, using my teaching skills for people who appreciated them. My house felt different without the constant interruption of family obligations. Quieter, yes, but also more peaceful. Mine. 10 days after my fight with Kevin, my youngest niece showed up at my door. Emma was 9, the sensitive one, the one who sometimes seemed to actually see me as a person rather than a fixture. Aunt Eleanor? She stood on my porch, looking uncertain. Can I talk to you? I invited her in, made her hot chocolate, and waited. Emma stirred her drink for a long time before speaking. I heard Mom and Dad talking about you. They were saying mean things. My chest tightened. What kind of things? They said you were ungrateful, that you should be happy to watch us because you don't have your own kids. That you're being selfish. Emma looked up at me with worried eyes. But that's not true, is it? You're not selfish. I chose my words carefully. Sometimes when people are upset that they can't use someone anymore, they call that person selfish. But it's not selfish to have boundaries. It's healthy. What's boundaries? It's knowing what you will and won't accept from other people. It's teaching people how to treat you. Emma nodded slowly. Like how I told Kylie she couldn't borrow my stuff without asking anymore? Exactly like that. Mom got mad at me for that. She said I should share with my sister. Sharing is good, but sharing should be a choice, not an obligation. And people shouldn't take your things without permission, even if they're family. Emma considered this. Then she said, I miss you. I don't like that we don't see you anymore. My throat tightened. I miss you too, sweetheart. Will you come back? I haven't gone anywhere. Your parents made a choice because I asked to be treated with respect. That's on them, not me. Emma hugged me tight before she left. After she was gone, I found a note she'd slipped under my sugar bowl. It was a drawing of the two of us in my garden, surrounded by tomato plants and flowers. At the bottom, in her careful 9-year-old handwriting, you matter. I put the drawing on my refrigerator, right in the center. 2 weeks later, I got a text from an unknown number. It turned out to be from a woman named Rebecca, one of the parents who dropped their kids off on my birthday. The message was brief. Someone told me it was your birthday that day. I'm so sorry. That was incredibly thoughtless of us. Please let me know if there's anything I can do to make it up to you. I didn't know what to say. The apology felt genuine, but also insufficient. Your thoughtlessness destroyed my day wasn't something I could text back. Instead, I wrote, Thank you for acknowledging that. It was a difficult day. She responded immediately. I can only imagine. For what it's worth, my kids had a great time, but that doesn't excuse our behavior. You didn't sign up to be a free daycare center. We ended up meeting for coffee. Rebecca was 43, a lawyer with 3 kids and a husband who traveled constantly for work. She explained that Kevin and Sarah had presented my babysitting as a done deal, a favor between family members that extended to friends. I feel terrible, Rebecca said. Kevin made it sound like you offered, like this was something you wanted to do. When I found out later it was your birthday and you hadn't even been asked, I was horrified. Did Kevin tell you he hadn't asked me? Rebecca shook her head. No, Madison let it slip. She mentioned how sad you looked when they dropped off your birthday cake. That's when I started asking questions. Children, they see everything. Emma noticing the mean things her parents said. Madison noticing my sadness. These small witnesses to the truth adults tried to hide. Rebecca and I talked for over an hour. She shared her own experiences with family expectations, the way her mother-in-law constantly volunteered her for things without asking. Last Christmas, my mother-in-law signed me up to make 80 cookies for her church bake sale. 80, she told me 2 days before the event. Rebecca shook her head. When I said I couldn't because I had work deadlines and my own kids' school parties to prepare for. She told everyone I was too selfish to help with charity, made me out to be this terrible person. Did you make the cookies? I asked. I did. I stayed up until 3 a.m, exhausted and resentful, making cookies for people I didn't know for an event I didn't care about. And you know what my mother-in-law said when I delivered them? I shook my head. Oh, good. You came through. I knew you would. Not thank you. Not I appreciate the sacrifice. Just confirmation that I'd performed as expected. Rebecca's voice was tight with remembered frustration. That was my breaking point. I told her right there that I'd never be volunteered for anything again. If she wanted my help, she needed to ask, actually ask, not assume, at least 2 weeks in advance, and accept that I might say no. How did she react? Like I'd slapped her. She cried. She told my husband I was being cruel. She said I was trying to come between her and her son. The whole family took sides. It was a nightmare for months. But, I prompted, sensing there was more. But eventually things settled. She learned I meant what I said. Now she asks. Sometimes I say yes. Sometimes no. Our relationship is better because it's honest. She can't make me the villain when I set clear boundaries and stick to them. We bonded over the universal experience of being voluntold rather than asked, of having our time and energy treated as communal property rather than personal resources. There was something deeply validating about sharing these stories, about realizing I wasn't uniquely weak or somehow failing at family. This was a pattern, a common experience among women especially. The expectation that we exist to serve, that our needs are secondary, that saying no is selfish, but demanding our yes is somehow loving. You did the right thing, Rebecca said as we parted. Setting boundaries is hard, but it's necessary. I hope your family comes around. I hope so too. But I was learning that hope and expectation were different things. I could hope for reconciliation while accepting that it might never come. 3 weeks after my birthday, Kevin showed up at my door. It was a Saturday morning, and I was getting ready to leave for my gardening club. He looked uncomfortable, hands shoved in his pockets, not quite meeting my eyes. "Can we talk?" he asked. I let him in. We sat in my living room, the same room where Sarah had demanded I continue enabling their behavior. The silence stretched between us. "Emma won't stop talking about you," Kevin finally said. "She keeps asking when she can see you again." "She can see me any time. She knows where I live." Sarah and I thought it would be better to have some distance, until you came to your senses. Came to my senses? You mean until I agreed to continue being used? Kevin flinched. That's not fair. Isn't it? Kevin, when was the last time you paid me back for any of the money you borrowed? When was the last time you asked instead of told me about babysitting? When was the last time you considered what I might want? He was quiet for a long moment. I didn't realize you felt used. How could you not realize? I've been saying yes to everything for 20 years, canceling my own plans, lending money I couldn't afford to lose, providing free childcare while you and Sarah went shopping or out to dinner. You never complained? I shouldn't have had to. You're my brother. You should have cared enough to notice. Kevin stood up, paced to the window, stared out at my replanted garden. The tomato plants were making a slow comeback. Sarah says you've changed, that you're not the person you used to be. Sarah's right, I'm not. I used to be someone who let people walk all over me. Now I'm someone who knows her worth. And what about family? What about loyalty? What about it? Loyalty goes both ways, Kevin. You can't demand it from me while giving nothing in return. He turned to face me. What do you want from me? An apology? Fine. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I took you for granted. Can we move past this now? The apology felt hollow, born of necessity rather than genuine remorse. I could hear the unspoken continuation. Can we move past this so things can go back to the way they were? No, I said. We can't move past this until things actually change. What does that mean? I pulled out a piece of paper I'd prepared days ago, hoping for this moment, but not expecting it. This is what I need from you if we're going to have a relationship moving forward. Kevin took the paper, reading with increasing disbelief. The list was simple. No spontaneous babysitting requests. At least 1 week's notice and an actual request, not an assumption. Payment for childcare when it wasn't a genuine family favor. Spending time with the kids because I wanted to, not because they needed a sitter. A repayment plan for the money owed. equal contribution to family events, regular check-ins that weren't just about what I could do for them. "This is ridiculous," Kevin said. "You're treating family like a business transaction." "No, I'm treating family like it should be, mutual, respectful, balanced. What's ridiculous is that asking for basic respect feels revolutionary to you." Sarah's going to flip when she sees this. Then maybe Sarah needs to examine why treating me decently feels like such an unreasonable request. Kevin crumpled the paper in his fist. "You know what? Forget it. I came here to make peace, and you're throwing demands at me like I'm some kind of criminal. Maybe we do need space. Maybe Emma will just have to deal with not seeing you." He stormed out. I sat in the sudden silence, listening to his car peel away. Part of me wanted to run after him, take it all back, accept whatever scraps of affection he was willing to give. That was the old pattern, the old Eleanor, but I stayed seated. I'd said what I needed to say. The ball was in his court now. That afternoon I went to my gardening club meeting. We were planning a community garden in a vacant lot near the center. I volunteered to help design the layout, using skills I'd developed over decades of nurturing my own small patch of earth. The other members valued my input, asked my opinion, treated me like someone who mattered. Walking home later, I passed the park where I used to take Kevin's kids. I'd pushed them on those swings hundreds of times, wiped tears from those slides, bought ice cream from that vendor. The memories didn't hurt as much as I expected. They were just memories now, neither good nor bad, but simply part of the landscape of my past. A month passed, then another. I filled my days with activities I'd neglected for years. I took a watercolor class at the community college. I joined a senior travel group planning a trip to Mackinac Island next summer. I volunteered twice a week at the literacy center, working with a wonderful woman named Dolores, who was learning to read at age 62 so she could write letters to her grandchildren. Patricia became a close friend. We had dinner every Tuesday, alternating who cooked. She introduced me to her daughter, who was nothing like Kevin, respectful, curious about my life, genuinely interested in who I was, beyond what I could provide. One evening at Patricia's house, her daughter asked me about my teaching career. I found myself telling stories I hadn't thought about in years. The student who couldn't read in 3rd grade and graduated high school with honors. The class that surprised me with a birthday party. The thank you notes I'd saved from kids who said I changed their lives. "You really made a difference," Patricia's daughter said. Made, past tense, but it didn't have to be. I was making a difference now, just in different ways. Dolores's face when she read her first full book. The community garden taking shape under all our hands. Emma's drawing on my refrigerator. A reminder that even small connections mattered. I wasn't lonely anymore. Or rather, I was learning to distinguish between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness was being surrounded by people who didn't see you. Solitude was choosing your own company and finding it sufficient. 10 weeks after my birthday, on a random Tuesday in late August, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Kevin standing there again. But this time he wasn't angry. He looked tired, older somehow, like he'd been carrying something heavy. "Can I come in?" he asked quietly. We sat in the same spots as last time, but the energy was different. Kevin wasn't defensive or demanding. He just looked, defeated. "Emma's been in therapy," he said. "She's been anxious, not sleeping well." The therapist asked about changes in her life. Emma talked about you, about how we used to see you all the time and now we don't, about how she misses you. I waited. There was more coming. The therapist asked why we weren't seeing you. Emma told her about the birthday, about the fight, about hearing Sarah and me say mean things about you. Kevin's voice cracked. She told the therapist everything. How we dumped 15 kids on you, how you looked sad all day, how your lamp got broken and nobody apologized, how your garden got destroyed, how we came home with shopping bags and didn't even notice it was your birthday. My throat tightened. Emma had seen all of it. Of course she had. Children always see more than we think. The therapist asked if Emma thought those things were true. The mean things Sarah and I said about you being ungrateful and selfish. Emma said no. She said you were the only one who ever really listened to her. Kevin's eyes were red-rimmed. She said she felt safest at your house because you paid attention to her, because you asked about her feelings and actually waited for answers. She said at home, everyone's always too busy or stressed, but with you, she mattered. I blinked back tears. Sweet Emma, who I'd watched grow from a colicky infant into this sensitive, observant 9-year-old. She'd always been the one who seemed to see me, really see me, as a person rather than a function. The therapist asked Emma what she'd want to say to you if she could. Emma said she'd say she was sorry, that she loved you, that she wished her parents treated you better. Kevin's voice broke completely. My 9-year-old daughter has better emotional intelligence than I do. She sees what I was too selfish to see. Tears pricked my eyes. Sweet Emma, protective even in her honesty. The therapist suggested family therapy, all of us together. Sarah and I went to one session without the kids. Kevin looked up at me. Elle, she absolutely destroyed us. He paused, seeming to relive the session. The therapist started by asking us to describe our relationship with you. Sarah said you were family, that you were always there for us, that you loved the kids. It sounded nice, right? Then the therapist asked, is Eleanor there for you, or are you there for Eleanor? Sarah didn't understand the question at first. Kevin rubbed his face. The therapist made us do an exercise. She asked Sarah to list what you'd done for our family over the years. The babysitting, the loans, everything. Sarah started listing and couldn't stop. Every Friday night for 2 years when the kids were little. Every emergency pickup from school. Every Christmas Eve and Thanksgiving you hosted. Every dollar you lent us. It took 20 minutes to list it all. Then the therapist asked what we'd done for you in return. We sat there in silence for a full minute, Elle. A full minute. Finally, Sarah said we invited you to family events. The therapist asked if you ever hosted those events. Sarah said yes. The therapist asked if you ever cooked for those events. Yes. The therapist asked if we ever helped clean up. Sarah went quiet. I could picture it. Kevin and Sarah squirming in their chairs, forced to confront what they'd spent years avoiding. The therapist asked when we'd last given you a birthday gift. We couldn't remember. She asked when we'd last paid for your meal at a restaurant. Never. She asked when we'd last asked about your life, your needs, your feelings, without it being followed by a request for something. We couldn't answer. And, I prompted when he fell silent. And she asked how we'd feel if our kids treated us the way we've been treating you. Sarah started crying, because we would never accept that from them. Never. Kevin pulled out a folded piece of paper from his pocket. My list, the one he'd crumpled and dismissed weeks ago. It was smoothed out now, worn at the creases like he'd been carrying it. I want to try, he said. I want to do this. All of it. The babysitting boundaries, the repayment plan, everything. Not because some therapist told me to, but because Emma helped me see what I was too proud to admit. I've been a terrible brother, and you deserve better. I wanted to believe him, but I'd learned to trust actions over words. Show me, I said. Don't tell me you'll change. Show me. Kevin nodded. He pulled out another piece of paper, this one new. It was a payment plan for the money he owed, $23,000 total, broken into monthly installments he could actually afford. $200 a month for 8 years. It wasn't fast, but it was real. I talked to a financial advisor, Kevin said. We're cutting back on things we don't need. No more expensive dinners out, no more designer stuff. This is our priority now, making this right. I looked at the payment plan. The numbers were honest, feasible. The first payment was scheduled for next week. What about the other things? I asked. The babysitting, the respect, the actual relationship? I've already told Sarah's parents they need to hire a sitter when they visit. We're not asking you to watch the kids anymore unless it's at least a week in advance and you want to. And we're going to start having actual family dinners, where we talk, where we ask about your life, where we treat you like family instead of hired help. And if I say no sometimes, to babysitting or dinners or whatever you ask, then we respect that. No guilt trips, no passive-aggressive comments, no punishment. Kevin met my eyes. I can't promise I'll be perfect. I've got 20 years of bad habits to unlearn. But I promise I'll try. Really try. We talked for 2 more hours. Kevin asked questions he'd never asked before, about my volunteer work, my watercolor class, my plans for the Mackinac trip. He asked about Daniel, about grief, about how I'd managed alone all these years. He listened. Actually listened. Instead of waiting for his turn to talk. As he was leaving, he turned back. Emma wants to know if you'll come to her school play next month. She's playing a flower in the garden scene. She specifically requested you be there. Of course I'll be there. Thank you, Elle, for not giving up on us, for giving me a chance to do better. After he left, I sat with the payment plan in my hands. It wasn't everything. It wasn't erasing 20 years of exploitation, but it was a start, and maybe that was enough. The next week, the first payment arrived, $200 via check with payment 1 of 96 written in the memo line. I deposited it, watching the numbers in my account tick up slightly. It would take 8 years to be fully repaid. I'd be 75. Kevin would be 67, the same age I was now. A week after that, Kevin and Sarah invited me to Sunday dinner. Not a big family gathering where I'd be expected to help, just the immediate family, plus me. When I arrived, the table was set, the food was ready, and nobody asked me to do anything except sit and eat and talk. Emma sat next to me, chattering about her play, her friends, her new interest in astronomy. The other kids were polite, but distant. They didn't know me well anymore, and that was partly my fault for always seeing them as obligations rather than individuals. We had relationship building to do. But Sarah asked about my watercolor class. Kevin asked about the community garden. They asked follow-up questions, remembered details from previous conversations. It felt like an actual relationship instead of a one-way service arrangement. It wasn't perfect. Old patterns don't die easily. At one point, Sarah mentioned their anniversary coming up and then caught herself. "We're hiring a sitter," she said quickly. "But if you'd like to see the kids that weekend, maybe we could arrange a fun day. The zoo or something? Only if you want to." "I'd like that," I said, and I meant it. After dinner, Emma showed me her costume for the play, a sunflower headpiece she'd made in art class. She put it on and struck a pose, grinning. "Do I look garden-worthy, Aunt Eleanor?" "Absolutely," I said, pulling out my phone. "Can I take a picture?" Emma nodded enthusiastically. I snapped a photo of her in her sunflower crown, beaming at the camera. Later, I'd print it and add it to my refrigerator, next to her drawing. Driving home that night, I felt something unfamiliar. Hope, but tempered with realism. This might work, or it might not. Kevin and Sarah might maintain these changes, or they might slip back into old patterns. Either way, I'd be okay. I had my own life now, my own purpose beyond being useful to others. The next few months were a delicate dance of re-establishing boundaries while allowing connection. It wasn't smooth or linear. There were stumbles and backslides and moments when old patterns tried to reassert themselves. 2 weeks after our initial reconciliation dinner, Sarah called and started with, "So I know this is last minute, but—" I could hear her catch herself mid-sentence. "Remember the boundaries we'd set?" She paused, then started over. "Actually, let me rephrase. Eleanor, I have a favor to ask, and I completely understand if the answer is no. Could you possibly watch the kids next Saturday afternoon? We have a wedding to attend, but if you're not available, we'll hire a sitter." The old Eleanor would have said yes automatically. The new Eleanor took a breath and checked her calendar, her feelings, my capacity. I had plans with Patricia that day, but they were flexible. Did I want to watch the kids? Did I have the energy? Was I doing this out of obligation or genuine desire? I could do it, I said slowly. But I'd like to only watch Emma and Sophie. 5 kids are too many for me now. Could you arrange other care for the boys? Silence. Then, that's fair. Let me work on that and get back to you. She called back an hour later. They'd found a friend's teenager to watch the 3 boys. Would I still be willing to take the girls? I said yes. When Saturday came, Sarah dropped off Emma and Sophie with a gift bag. Just a little something to say thank you, she said. Inside was a nice candle and a $50 gift card to a restaurant. It was a small thing, but it mattered. Kevin and Sarah invited me to things genuinely, accepted my no's without guilt, showed up when they said they would. The second payment arrived on time, $200, check number 2, memo line, payment 2 of 96. Then the third, the fourth. Each check was a small act of follow-through, a promise kept, a boundary respected. Emma's school play was wonderful. She took her role as a flower very seriously, swaying in the breeze with intense concentration. Afterward, she introduced me to her friends as my Aunt Eleanor, who has the best garden and teaches me about plants. Not my Aunt Eleanor who babysits us, or my Aunt Eleanor who helps our family. Just me, as a person with interests and value beyond my utility. The community garden opened in October. We had a small ceremony with the neighborhood. I'd designed the layout for the tomato section, using my years of experience to maximize sun exposure and companion planting. Standing there with dirt under my fingernails and Patricia by my side, I felt useful in the best way, by choice, not obligation. Kevin and his family came to the opening. They brought lemonade and cookies to share. Kevin took photos of me next to the tomato plants, genuinely proud. My sister designed this whole section, he told people. She's an expert gardener. My sister, the expert, not the doormat, not the free labor. The expert. Around Thanksgiving, Sarah called to ask if I wanted to host. Before I could respond, she quickly added, "We'd all contribute. Actually contribute. Kevin and I would handle the turkey and sides. The kids would make decorations, and we'd clean up after. You'd just provide the space, but only if you want to. We can do it at our house if you'd rather." I thought about it. My house, filled with family, but this time with actual help and appreciation. Or I could say no, spend the holiday with Patricia and her family like she'd invited me to. Both options were genuine. Both were okay. "Can I think about it and call you back tomorrow?" I asked. "Of course," Sarah said. No pressure, no guilt, just acceptance. I called Patricia that night. "What would you do?" I asked. "What do you want to do? Not what you think you should do, but what would actually make you happy." I sat with that question. What did I want? I wanted to see Emma. I wanted to give this new version of our family relationship a chance. I wanted to test whether the changes were real or performative, but I also wanted to protect myself, to not slip back into old patterns just because it was a holiday. "I want to host," I said slowly, "but I'm scared." "Then set it up for success," Patricia advised. "Clear expectations, firm boundaries, an exit plan if things go sideways." The next day I called Sarah back. "Let's do it here," I said. "But I'm holding you to the cleanup promise. And I need you to arrive at the time we agree on, not an hour late. And I need this to actually be a shared effort, not me doing everything while you all show up to eat." "Agreed," Sarah said. "I'll send you a list of what we're bringing by this weekend. You can approve it or ask us to adjust." She sent the list. It was detailed and fair. They were bringing the turkey, stuffing, 2 side dishes, rolls, and wine. Kevin's oldest boys were assigned table setting and decoration duty. The kids would be responsible for clearing plates. Kevin and Sarah would handle all cleanup. I was assigned hosting space, one side dish of my choosing, and my presence. That was it. Thanksgiving was different than any previous holiday. People showed up with food. They set the table. They cleaned as they went. Sarah brought flowers for the table and thanked me for hosting. Kevin's oldest son, usually surly and distant, asked about my volunteer work and actually listened to the answer. Emma sat next to me during dinner. When Kevin raised his glass for a toast, he said, "To family who shows up for each other. To my sister Elle, who taught us what boundaries and respect really mean. We're grateful you didn't give up on us, even when we gave you every reason to." The other adults raised their glasses. The kids followed, not understanding but sensing the weight of the moment. I raised mine too, looking around at faces that finally saw me as a person rather than a resource. After everyone left, after they cleaned, after they hugged me goodbye, after Emma slipped another drawing under my sugar bowl, I sat in my quiet house. There were no dishes in the sink, no trash on the floor, just the pleasant exhaustion of a holiday spent with people who valued me. I opened the refrigerator to put away leftovers and saw Emma's new drawing. It was me again, but this time I was surrounded by my community garden friends, Patricia, and the kids from my literacy center. At the bottom, she'd written, "Aunt Eleanor's family." Not our family's Eleanor, not the family helper. Just me, with my own chosen family surrounding me. The next morning, I counted my blessings in concrete terms. 6 months of consistent payments from Kevin, $1,200 returned of the $23,000 owed. A rebuilt relationship with Emma, and slowly growing connections with the other kids. Boundaries that held even when tested. Friendships with Patricia and the garden club folks and Rebecca from that terrible birthday. A sense of purpose through my volunteer work. A life that belonged to me. But the biggest blessing was internal, self-respect I'd finally found by demanding it. The knowledge that I could survive being alone, which meant I didn't have to accept mistreatment just to avoid loneliness. The understanding that love without respect wasn't love at all. Winter came to Chicago with its usual fierce beauty. The community garden went dormant, but we had plans for spring. Patricia and I went to a holiday market downtown, drinking hot chocolate and watching ice skaters on the rink. Rebecca and I got coffee once a month now, a genuine friendship built on mutual respect. Kevin's family invited me to their Christmas Eve dinner, not to host it, just to attend. Sarah made her famous lasagna. Kevin gave me a gift, a framed photo of all the kids in my garden, surrounded by tomato plants and flowers. On the back, he'd written, "To the gardener who taught us to grow. Love, Kevin." I hung the photo in my living room, next to the wedding picture of Daniel and me. Past and present, grief and hope, loss and rebirth, all part of the same story. On Christmas morning, I woke up alone in my house and didn't feel lonely. I made myself a special breakfast, went to the Art Institute like Daniel and I always had, came home to my quiet evening. Emma called to tell me about her presence, chattering with excitement, but also asking about my day. She was learning to think beyond herself, to consider others. Kevin was teaching her that, finally. In January, my birthday came around again. Kevin called a week in advance. "Elle, we want to take you to dinner on your birthday. Wherever you want to go, our treat. The kids can stay with a sitter. This is about you, not us." I chose the Italian place on Taylor Street, the one I'd planned to go to last year. Kevin, Sarah, and I sat at a small table, eating cannoli and talking about everything and nothing. They'd brought me a gift, a new gardening tool set I'd mentioned wanting, practical and thoughtful. "Happy birthday, Elle," Kevin said, raising his glass. "To many more, celebrated the way you deserve." That night, I sat in my kitchen with my small birthday cake, a new one from the Polish bakery, same as last year. I lit a candle, not just for Daniel now, but for myself, for the woman who'd found her worth, for the Eleanor who said no, for the person I'd become by refusing to accept less than I deserved. The candle flickered in the dark kitchen. I made a wish, not for family reconciliation, because I had that. Not for money to be repaid, because it was happening. I wished for continued strength to hold my boundaries, to know my worth, to never again teach people they could use me. I blew out the candle. The smoke curled up toward the ceiling, carrying my wish into the universe. Looking back now, from the other side of that terrible birthday and the transformation that followed, I understand something crucial. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give ourselves is saying no. Sometimes love means demanding better. Sometimes the only way to save a relationship is to risk losing it. My family expected me to give up my birthday to watch 15 kids. I refused. That refusal led to months of pain, confrontation, and uncertainty. But it also led to self-respect, genuine relationships, and a life that finally felt like mine. Here's what I've learned about family manipulation and exploitation. It thrives on silence. On good people staying quiet to keep the peace. On the assumption that certain family members exist to serve while others exist to take. It ends when someone, anyone, says enough. If you're reading this and seeing yourself in my story, know these warning signs. Family members who use stress as a constant excuse for their behavior rarely change without consequences. People who volunteer you for commitments without asking don't respect your autonomy. Those who call you selfish for having boundaries are usually the selfish ones. Family members who only contact you when they need something don't actually want a relationship. They want a resource. Setting boundaries isn't mean or selfish or ungrateful. It's healthy. It's necessary. It's the only way to build relationships based on mutual respect rather than one-sided servitude. Yes, there will be pushback. Yes, people might get angry or try to make you feel guilty. Yes, you might lose relationships you thought were important. But here's the truth. Nobody tells you. Losing a relationship built on your exploitation isn't actually a loss. It's liberation. And the people who truly love you will respect your boundaries. They might need time to adjust, like Kevin did. They might need a wake-up call, like my terrible birthday provided. But if they genuinely care, they'll rise to meet you where you are. The cost of silence, of continuing to accept mistreatment just to maintain the illusion of family harmony, is too high. It costs you your self-respect, your autonomy, your sense of worth, your actual life being lived on your own terms. I spent 20 years paying that cost before I finally said enough. Today, my life looks completely different than it did a year ago. I have actual relationships instead of service arrangements. I have boundaries that people respect. I have pursuits that matter to me, friendships built on reciprocity, purpose beyond being useful to others. I have myself back. The journey from doormat to self-respecting person isn't easy or straightforward. There are setbacks and doubts and moments of weakness where the old patterns beckon. But every time I hold a boundary, every time someone respects my no, every time I choose myself without guilt, I get stronger. Emma asked me recently what I'd tell someone in a situation like I was in. I thought about it carefully before answering. I'd tell them that teaching people how to treat you starts with knowing you deserve to be treated well. I'd tell them that family who truly loves you will want your happiness, not just your service. I'd tell them that it's never too late to demand better, even if it feels terrifying. And I'd tell them that they matter. Their time matters, their needs matter. Their life matters, just as much as anyone else's. She nodded solemnly, processing this. Then she said, "I'm glad you know you matter now, Aunt Eleanor. Me too, sweetheart. Me too." So I'll ask you the same question I asked myself on that terrible birthday when everything changed. What are you teaching people about how to treat you? Are you accepting less than you deserve because you're afraid of being alone? Are you sacrificing yourself on the altar of family harmony while nobody notices or cares? Have you lived through something similar? Do you know someone who's trapped in the cycle of family exploitation, afraid to set boundaries because they might lose relationships that are already one-sided? I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. Sometimes knowing we're not alone is the first step toward change. And if this story resonated with you, if you saw yourself or someone you love in my journey from doormat to self-respecting person, please like this video and subscribe to this channel. These stories need to be told. These experiences need to be shared. Because somewhere out there, someone is sitting at their kitchen table on their birthday, watching their life be consumed by others' needs, wondering if they matter. They do matter. You matter. I matter. We all matter, not just for what we can provide, but for who we are. Never forget that. Never accept less. Never stop demanding the respect you deserve. That's my story. That's my truth. That's my hard-won wisdom from the other side of saying no. I hope it helps someone find their own strength to do the same.